Right, I made a few changes to Breya that hopefully you'll enjoy. I've been toying around with different things. I did have Hymn to Torok in here, and I actually had Misdirection in here. I also had more one-drop counters. I actually pulled some of that stuff out and went ahead and I put Negate and Memory Lapse back into the deck, and because I just rather have the solid two mana counters that always work. And Lapse is really good for dealing with commanders early. It's one of the ways that you can stop an early Vial Smasher, for example, and I think that's pretty important to be able to do that. I also went ahead and put Disenchant and Vedalken Shackles back in the deck. It's an interesting test not having them, but playing a million counters and then something slips through and then you realize like you have tutors and no targets. That's not good. The deck needs to have, if you're going to run Silver Bullet tutors, you need to have things to go get that solve your problems. And having the most straightforward solution to artifacts and enchantments and one of the strongest answers to cheap creatures, in particular Vial Smasher, green elves, and cards like Sylvan Wayfarer have a tough time against Vedalken Shackles and so forth. So I think both of those cards probably do make it in. I also went ahead and added As Foretold. This card, regardless of what happens with the other configuration, I think that card's probably going to stay because it's just such an OP, like, it's such an amazing effect. I hadn't realized that As Foretold allowed you to cast counter spells, and that was the one thing that had prevented me from. I thought that, well, for a number of things, I thought, first of all, that you could only use it once as on your turn, which would make it significantly worse. Secondly, I thought you could only cast cards that matched the number of counters on it. So eventually I thought, okay, well, eventually it'll get to 6 and then I can't cast anything with it. Um, Neither of those are true, and with those not being true, the card's much, much stronger. So you can actually, As Foretold, as most of you may already know, for a card like Ancestral Vision, and for that reason, I am actually testing. I took out Hymn to Torok and put in Restore Balance. So what this allows you to do, potentially, is if you draw the Restore Balance, at some point in the game, you can just tutor for As Foretold, slam it, and cast an actual balance that costs 0 mana. Or you can have it the other way around. You have As Foretold down, and then you just go get Restore Balance and clear the board with it. So it's kind of like having an extra Armageddon. I don't have Zern Orb to combo with it. Zern Orb Restore Balance, or Zern Orb and Balance was the old school combo, but that's in a 60 card deck, and I'm not sure that we need Zern Orb just for that. Since we have all these pickup lands, Gush, Daze, and so forth, we can get a lot of lands off the table and still make it a pretty painful Armageddon for our opponents. Um, and also asking to get As Foretold, Zern Orb, and Restore Balance as a threefer is pretty rough. There's plenty of games where you won't draw As Foretold at all, and then you're drawing Restore Balance, and then you've got a tutor for As Foretold. You don't want to have to tutor for that and go fetch a Zern Orb on top of it. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So I left it out. The other card I put in here is Counterflux. This card just seems like for those situations where if your opponent resolves a spell, they win the game. This is a card for you. So it just seems like it's not a very good defensive counter. So like, let's say or offensive counter rather, if you're trying to push something through. So for example, let's say you cast you make a play, your opponent counter spells that play, you counterflux their counter spell, haha, they can't counter back. Well, they're just going to counter your original play back and ignore your counterflux. So it's not really good for that. But on the other hand, your opponent's trying to make a play and you have counterflux in your hand. Well, you can definitively say, no, it's not happening. And that can certainly make a difference in a game. So I think everything else should be the same. Also, more things that say can't be countered against this blue heavy format seems like a pretty good idea in general. I think that's it. In the game we're going to play, I think Stubborn Denial was actually either Spell Pierce or Spell Snare, but I went ahead and changed it out to Stubborn Denial because in the long run I think Stubborn Denial is stronger. So if that comes up in these games, I do apologize. I think I still had Hymn to Torok in the game rather than Restore Balance, but it never came up, so that shouldn't matter. And I believe everything else was configured the same way. So let's get to it. All right, so match one was against Carlos Z. And how are we doing here? Okay, there we go. All right, so Carlos Z here. And I think he wins the dice roll and he makes a horrible mistake. So he's playing Sidisi, and I have a pretty solid hand. So I get first turn, I suspend Ancestral. My opponent goes turn 2 Winter Orb against me, and he's playing black? Sure. So anyway, I Mox Diamond away on Plains and Vampiric Tutor. I don't really have, like, my hand's a little clunky, but we're going to try to fix that. So we've got an Ancestral suspended. I got to worry about Sidisi's ability to instantly win the game with Buried Alive shenanigans. But here he taps out under Orb for Phyrexian Arena, and I'm quite happy to see that. So we're going to tax up, and that'll incidentally turn on Gush, which is nice. So I discarded Plains to Mox Diamond, which is the 4th basic land in here, so there are no more basic lands at this time. So go ahead and play Duretti and start activating constructs. It won't stop the insta combo if he tries to combo me out, but on the other hand, it just gives me a lot of like board presence and flexibility. All right, so at some point, what I'd like to do is potentially play a few islands and then use Gush to shuffle him back. So I figure I'm probably safe. I'm not going to necessarily lose right there. And so I went ahead and played the Talisman because it was more beneficial to take that risk, I thought. I felt like it was a very low risk. Okay, so now I finally put Scroll Rack together. I've got Counterspell up. My opponent's Phyrexian Arena has 0 chance of keeping up with what's going on over here. So he has an Inquisition, however. I'm going to Gush in response. Tithe. Up to 10 cards, I believe. Yes. And then we're going to Scroll Rack everything away and try to get something going. So he's going to have his pick of 10 cards, and I'm going to set up whatever I want on top of my library if I choose not to land tax. So I decided to put Counterspell on top. And so there's my new hand. So, I guess I did have a him here, but as I recall, I'm fairly certain I don't actually play it here. It would have been Restore Balance. Anyway, his follow-up to that play was another discard effect, and he took a disenchant out of my hand. And then on my turn, I tax up to 10 cards, and my opponent realizes that he's absolutely crushed under the Winter Orb. And Tax Rack is certainly, if Winter Orb wasn't bad enough, Tax Rack's going to put him away. And he just scoops. There's no point in even trying to continue right here. I could not believe that the mono black player played a Winter Orb. That was just kind of startling for me in a good way. So as you can see in that game, Restore Balance, him to Troc, whatever, would have been the same thing. Would have been nice to have been able to have had the option to Restore Balance to the Force or whatever, but clearly I had a very imbalanced situation, as a matter of fact, so it was probably fine. All right, anyway, so my opponent here is playing Titania, Protector of Argos. I get to lead off with a first turn Imprinting Toxic Deluge, Azorius Signet. And I felt like I would have to rely on Breya to keep the board under control. My opponent's got a suspended Search for Tomorrow, and he's Sylvan Scryings for a Wasteland. So go ahead and just cast Breya. I know that my land's going to get wasted, but the game plan is to follow up with Duretti potentially. So he gets Wastes. Oh, now I can't follow up with Duretti. Reclamation Sage is one of my mana sources, and then Wasteland's the other. So we're actually even on mana source. After all that, he killed 3 of my mana sources, and we're break even. We're also even on cards in hand. So he actually plays his 4th mana source and then casts Serpapard, who I kill. I play Cavern of Souls here because Chancery would have prevented me from casting a counterspell, unfortunately. I was so surprised that he got Wastes. Like, I'm not sure why it's in the deck, but maybe there's... Oh, I can think. You know what? He's probably got Eldrazi. In fact, I think it comes up later. Anyway, so I can finally use my bounce land effectively here. He goes for Titan. I actually thought about... I was thinking about Primetime, like, can I just beat him without having to counter it? Because I could have used Duretti to kill it and then potentially just tutored up for a Winter Orb. But in the end, the mana didn't quite work out, and that was extremely greedy if I was going to try to do something like that. Or I could have tutored for Armageddon, for example, but it just seemed super greedy. And for me, Winter Orb with a bounce land, Winter Orb's stronger, better play. So yeah, there he goes. Thought Not Seer, and he actually gets ready. I have Ready in my opening hand against green. Can never get it on the table because I had a Signet rather than something more useful for fixing my mana situation. Anyway, on my turn, I go ahead and Painful Truce. Then I sacrifice 2 artifacts, kill his Thought Not Seer, draw a card from it, play a land. Now I've got Mana Leak up, and my opponent's at 3 life because I've been kicking his teeth in with Breya, so that'll do there. I was told I can click somewhere. I have no idea. Here? Yes, okay. Nice. Nice. All right, so thank you. I think it was Methany who actually explained that one. All right, so Game 3, playing against Crom and Vial Smasher, the boogeyman of the format. So I've got first turn. I could have gone land Mox Diamond, but I kind of want to sandbag it. So I go first turn Mystical Tutor. And I go fetch myself a Yogg Will. And throw away Wasteland. You will not see me do that much, but I figure with Yogg Will I can get it back, so I might as well. I want a Painful Truce here. I don't play Jeweled Amulet there in case he hymns me. I want to be able to Yawgmoth Will it back into play, but I'll play it this turn because I have Cryptic Command, so I don't think he's going to be hitting me with a hymn, and I want to go ahead and get it charged up. Because I can now play Azorius Chancery and still have 4 mana for Cryptic, which is really nice. So I've got the Will. I'm just waiting for the way. So end of turn, he goes Call against Command on Mox Diamond. I counter and draw a card. And on his turn, that clears out the ability to play Fiery Confluence, killing both of my artifacts and dealing damage to me. But kind of pointless to kill 0-drop artifacts when I'm holding Yogg Will. I guess he gets to make me discard a card for the Mox Diamond. But he taps out, so I can actually Yawgmoth Will into this crazy turn where I Painful Truce. I decide Painful Truce is more important than getting like a Wasteland Mystical Tutor turn. So now I have 7 cards in hand all over again. I drew a counterspell, which was amazing. Treachery, his Vial Smasher, and then Demonic Tutor, because I have 1 floating due to the Azorius Chancery interaction with Treachery. And I go for Winter Orb, and it sticks? Well, this isn't looking good for my opponent. He plays Dimir Aqueduct, but yeah, I've got a Wasteland in the graveyard. I drew Mox Opal here, which was really nice. I don't care. I could have gone for the Crucible to deal extra damage right there and then play the Mox, but I wanted maximum mana up for flexibility, and I wanted to play it off the Opal. I didn't really care about missing out on 3 damage. In fact, my opponent Cryptic Commands during upkeep. I strip mine I Wasteland his Dimir Aqueduct, and he Cryptic Commands in response, bouncing his commander back to his hand. I could counter it, but who cares? So I just let it happen, and he looks at the board and scoops. I mean, I'm going to untap everything in play, cast Breya, right, and then Wasteland. And if he were to have a Chrome Mox or a Mox Diamond here, then I get to Dak Fade and away whatever he has, and we're just going to recur Wasteland under Winter Orb. So that's one way to lock out a Vial Smasher deck. Draw lots of Moxes. So anyway. Oh, I forgot to push the button. I'm going to get that habit eventually. But as you can see, of course, the changes that I've made to the deck, while they may improve it in future games, is not really affecting anything about these matches here. So at the mulligan, my first hand, I keep a risky second hand. Top card was not mana, so I tuck it to the bottom. I mean, it wasn't land. And ponder. Thankfully, my opponent allows me to have this ponder. So I'm able to get Watery Grave to the top of my library. So he plays Baral. So mana screwed against blue is not good. I think the Spell Pierce is going to sort of come up in this game, but as you'll see, it won't actually matter. Anyway, so I Imperial Seal. And against blue, go get Cavernous Souls. So I'm sitting on Evasive Action Pierce, and I feel pretty good about that. I guess if it was Evasive Action and the one I'm using now, it wouldn't be as good. Oh, I rip a Notion Thief naturally. So my opponent's just hitting his land drops, and I'm not. I can't afford to cast Merchant Scroll. It's just too risky. I just got to be patient. It's the only way to go against blue. All right, so he's dealing some. He's actually got me on a decent clock over there between Baral and Mishra's. But I do get to play a end of turn uncounterable Notion Thief. My opponent snaps it back to my hand. Okay. Kind of sucks, but hey, I got a card out of it. I suppose it's good. So I'm going to have to eat 3 more damage. And at the end of my opponent's turn, I'm going to cast Notion Thief. And he's going to enter the Royal It. Okay. It's getting a little bit frustrating. How about if we try Breya here? I'm taking too much damage. I need some blockers, and because I drew Jace, if he puts Emrakul into play, I don't lose. But Breya also turns on the Mox Opal. Alright. A land there was very, very nice. So we are done. I should attack with the flyer probably, but I missed the opportunity. Alright, Notion Thief's down. Feeling a little bit better now. Let's try a Grim. We're going to try to develop some mana. He's got Snare. Gonna have to let that go. But he is not able to draw and discard off a Brawl. Had he done that, I would have drawn. He would have discarded. So he wisely chose not to take advantage of that. And this is one of the things. Notion Thief punishes that deck so hard. So I try for a Merchant Scroll. My opponent negates it. I try to remand the Merchant Scroll back into my hand. But he has a rewind. So I cannot quite evasive action here because he's just had too much time to play too many lands, despite the fact that evasive action is for 4. And then I realized, well, I can't attack with a flyer, so we'll do that. But he didn't get to draw off of either of those counters. So try a main phase Painful Truth, and it hits, allowing me to find a Dimer Aqueduct, picking up a land so I can play Mox Diamond, which allows me to cast land tax. Very, very good position here, and I can still cast both Pierce and Snare, although Pierce, as you can see at this point in the game, Pierce just needs to be the one that I've replaced it with, the one that just hard counter says, if you've got a Breya, it's a negate for 1. Anyway, so on my next turn, so at the end of my opponent's turn, I'm able to Impulse, and on my next turn, I'm able to land tax. I Impulse and take Supreme Verdict in case, all else fails. I want to have a backup plan. I'm going to I play Scroll Rack to complete the combo. He's got Dismiss. I would draw off Dismiss, but I really want the Scroll Rack because I'll draw way more cards off of that. So I evasive action here, Mana Leak, and finally Spell Pierce, and with 1 mana left he has Mental Misstep. Oh, that's a real bummer. Yeah, I kind of, if that Pierce had only been, again, had only been the negate effect, I would have been a lot better off. But on the bright side, I drew a card off of his Dismiss, and I pick up a negate. Alright, so my opponent actually, I attack there for some reason, and my opponent swings back in. So I don't have an obvious, so I'm able to cast Jace and put back the 2 lands, and then the 2 basics. So even though I don't have Scroll Rack going, I actually got Jace going. So I plunk him for 3 because I'm not going to be blocking with Notion Thief ever. And cast As Foretold and pass. My opponent goes for Merchant Scroll with 1 card in hand, so I negate it. His last card is Flusterstorm. Well, again, Baral will not allow him to draw. I was a little concerned he might be going to get Cyclonic Rift here, but he gets Synthetic Destiny. It's odd. Goes to his end step, and so he wants an Emrakul. I guess it's not the oddest thing. And then because earlier when I had run out of lands, I had said always yield to land tax and always no. So I lost an opportunity to tax right there. Not only did I not get 2 cards for Jace, but I was forced to draw the same junk. So on my turn, so at the end of my turn, Emrakul pops into play. On his turn, he swings. I'm at 7, so this is a very scary attack. But of course, I am able to at least leave 1 Thopter back to block. At the end of my turn, I As Foretold the Enlightened Tutor. And I go get, of course, it means I can't tax again. Eventually I'll get to tax though. As Foretold's at 2, so I play a 0-drop Winter Orb. And then use Jace to pick up his Emrakul. I wasn't sure if I was going to need the Supreme Verdict there or not. I really don't want the Notion Thief to die. But luckily the last card in his hand wasn't able to really do much here. So he's got 9, 10, 11 mana over there. I can finally start taxing. As Foretold's ticking up now. So far, it's produced 3 mana for me, and I've spent 3 mana, so it's been a break even. But anything after this is going to be just pure gravy. It is now world's greatest Soul Ring. I just cast Vindicate for 0. And I can cast Disenchant on my opponent's turn for free as well, potentially. However, he throws his Mishra's Factory out there to try to block Notion Thief, so I disenchant the factory before blockers, and he hard casts Force of Will. This is crazy. So I'm just going to sack and kill it. I don't really see the logic there. He's way behind. We know Emrakul's in his hand. He just lost 2 lands on that. Not a good fight there for him. On the other hand, maybe he wanted to tap some of my mana down just to try to come up with a solution while I was tapped out. And that would make a lot of sense. But yeah, so as foretold, it ticks up to 4 where we can now cast Supreme Verdict for free. Just gets better and better. I could very well see... I don't know. I think this card... I did it again. I think this card is so... it's quite interesting, and I think it has very, very good synergy with Winter Orb as well as Armageddon effects. Just the fact that you could Armageddon with that thing and play and nothing else, and eventually you're going to be casting Breya out of the command zone for 0. It's pretty good. All right, so final game here. My opponent's playing everything but blue. 2 partner commanders, but not blue ones. And I have a very clunky hand, but it's got potential. And the potential is I need to be able to go get, against a deck like that, I always am going to need to be able to go get Toxic Deluge. So that's what I'm banking on here. Alright, so I can hard cast Daze here if I need to, or Impulse. My opponent casts Thalia, so it's going to be Impulse. Let's go get a land. But I cannot Deluge because Thalia is going to keep me off it. Fortunately, I top deck Felwar Stone. You're going to see this is extremely good here. My opponent plays a land, and his Thalia is now going to hurt him because he's got to tap 4 for Council's Judgment, which means I can spend 1 and Daze it and have exactly enough mana for a Toxic Deluge here. I even have enough life to cast that Painful Truths eventually if I want to. Now my opponent's way down in tempo. So he plays one of his commanders as expected, and Palace Jailer to the rescue. Goodbye, Commander. It goes to the command zone, so I don't ever have to worry about it coming back. We're now in draw 2 cards per turn mode. He gets a Mox Diamond, edicts the Jailer. Doesn't get his guy back. Gets a Sylvan, though. And I play Breya. I think he was expecting his commander to pop back, maybe. I'm not really sure. But with Breya coming down here, I'm not sure if I would have... I think I would have... Would I have played Ancient Tomb? I'm not sure. I think I would have went ahead and just played Dimir Aqueduct. I'm drawing 2 cards per turn, and I'm soon enough, like with Forbid and everything, I'm going to be able to draw a whole bunch of cards off of the Painful Truths if I want to. And I have a pretty good control of the board. It's too early to Ravages. I really... Again, I want to get Disenchant and deal with his Mox Diamond or Sylvan or go find Dak Faden for the Mox, for example. So, I mean, and drawing, with the amount of cards I'm drawing, it's going to happen pretty fast. So, yeah, I probably would have played the Aqueduct. I think from here he was probably, I was thinking maybe it was premature, but perhaps not. I mean, he knows his deck certainly better than I do. And if my opponent were to, for example, pay some life and somehow get like a Wrath of God effect and play a land and pass, with the Dimir Aqueduct that's about to come down, I could immediately just play a land and recast Breya on the spot and put him right back in the same kind of predicament. So it would be pretty rough going here, and that's not even counting what the 2 cards per turn would do for me. And with that, another fairly straightforward 5-0 that also included the dreaded, Vial Smasher. So, all right, that's it. I think I like the changes here. I am looking forward to seeing if Restore Balance does any work for me or if it's just too gimmicky and doesn't belong. But it's really hard to say. The power level of balance is so high that a gimmicky balance might be worth it. It's such a strong card in a deck that's running tons of artifacts like this one is. So I guess we'll see. It's also one of the reasons I actually put Shackles back in the deck too. because I just want more. I want more. I want to get more permanents on the board pre-balance. I did try out a few other things. I tried Liliana and I tried a few other things, and I wasn't terribly excited with them. I think in 100% of games that I had Liliana, it was either stuck in my hand or it came down, did almost nothing, and died immediately. Like this deck just doesn't seem to. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to have a role in here. So I took her back out. And with that, thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you next time.